So something interesting happened during my weekly Fox game this past week. And by interesting, I mean that I lost because of advice that I received. It's definitely not the fault of the advice, but it was a contributing factor, and maybe I misinterpreted the advice or misapplied the advice. But I was watching a simple Paduk video. You probably have heard of him. Z from Simple Baduk. He does quite a lot of good content. Very hardworking Paduk contributor. But he has a recent video talking about how to get stronger. And, these videos are always the most popular. And I watched it, and what was interesting to me about that video was there were two pieces of advice I noticed that were pieces of advice I'd never heard before. It was beyond the standards, like do your Tsumeko problems and things like that, and review your games. These two pieces of advice I was really new to me. First piece of advice was to hold something in your hand while you play your game so that you don't rush to make moves impulsively. Like whether it's a bracelet or a fan, like some Japanese Go players used to do. I guess they don't really do that anymore in the pro world. But that was a really new piece of advice for me. And I tried it during the game, and this is not the piece of advice that contributed to my loss. This was actually fantastic advice. I have this little metal turtle that I got from Hawaii, and I decided this will be my object that I'll hold in my hand. And every time I made a move, I would pick the turtle back up and hold on to it while I thought. And it was such a good grounding thing and really prevented me from making impulse decisions. But I noticed that I kept on being tempted to just leave my hand on the mouse, especially for easy sequences that I felt like I knew what was going to happen. I felt like I didn't need to pick up the turtle again. But I think that's the key. You got to pick up the turtle or whatever you got every move you make and make a habit of it. And then you can really slow down and make sure you think between moves. So that piece of advice, golden. Okay, so I loved that. The other piece of advice, which I was not as successful with, was to use the estimate score function as many times as you can during the game. Now, this is a bit controversial. A lot of people may think, oh, you should not use the estimate score function. You should learn how to count the points on your own. You should be able to estimate it without using a tool like that. But I've always, so for me, I've never used those. I've never used it except save for a few times in the end game when maybe I just wanted to make sure this was a fully lost game, right? It would feel terrible if I resigned and I realized I was ahead. That kind of thing, I kind of get tempted to use it and those times, and I wanted to just double check. I feel like whenever I've used it in the past, it was when the game has kind of been decided already, and I just wanted to double check whether my feelings about the game aligned with reality. But overall, I'd never really used that feature during the game, and it wasn't something that I was staunchly opposing. I was just kind of afraid of what it might lead to, but I did always have this thought in the back of my head, thinking like, okay, all the stuff I know about feedback, you need to get good feedback right away as soon as you make mistakes, and you need to know what's happening on the board. And I thought, maybe if you use the estimate score function, you would have better direct feedback on what is happening on the board, and the moves that you're making are actually affecting the territory count. And I've had that thought for a long time now. And so seeing Simple Baduk promote that idea, I thought, you know what, I'm going to give it a shot this game. And so during the game, I checked in, once we passed the mid game, I started checking in on the points. And the other thing I was doing during this game is to play peacefully and not be so aggressive and try to keep my group stable and alive. And that's kind of my MO that I chose for that game. And so I'm playing this peaceful game, making sure I'm solid, making sure I get, enough territory. And I'm checking the estimate score and it says I'm up by 20 points. So I'm like, great. Now I can kind of cruise. I can kind of keep playing the way I am playing. And I check again. It keeps saying 20 points. And at some point, I drop down to like 10 points. And I kind of worry. I'm like, uh-oh, I think I did make a mistake there. And then it goes back up to 20 points. And I'm like, okay, I feel like I maybe turned it back around. We go to counting, and it turns out I lost by like 20 points. I don't know what happened with the score estimator, but it just wasn't functioning very well. I tried to make sure it was, because I looked at all the points that it was marking as mine and theirs, and it seemed to be correct. So I kind of trusted it. I don't know how else I would have really played. I don't know if there's really that much crazy stuff that I could have done to turn the game around earlier. When you look at the AI graph, it just kind of slopes in their direction all the way through. So the silver lining of this experience is that this is a game that I really don't know what I did wrong. Like, I played safe, and I think my guess is a matter of, I think I played inefficiently throughout the entire game, and they just kind of were able to edge out the win by making better, more efficient moves all the way through. But this is the type of game you want, the type of game where you lose and you don't know why you lost. I think that's an important type of game to play, because then I can kind of go into that review and look at the game and just really study, like, what am I missing from this game? What have I really misunderstood and that caused me to lose? So I'm excited to go back and review that game some more to see if I can find anything. But that was my little tidbit. I'll link the video, Simple Baduk's video, in the description, and so that you can check out the other tips that he gave. I thought it was a good video. I always love these kind of tips to get stronger video. But you're listening to Starpoint, the show about Go for Go fans away from the board, and we have some answers. I asked and I received. Some very generous, strong players have gone through nearly all of the questions I've asked and given extensive answers on them. And I'm really excited to get through them. I barely just skimmed them, so I don't really know exactly what they've said, but I'm going to give credit to these 4 people who have written in and answered extensively. Isaiah, who is a 3 to 4 Dan AGA, 6 Dan on Fox, 3 Dan on KGS. I'll give you his little intro that he gave. I'm a huge fan of the show, and I actually got interviewed by you briefly during the LA Open last year. I'm 3 Dan to 4 Dan AGA, 6 Dan on Fox, and 3 Dan on KGS. I wanted to give some of my perspective on the questions you asked today. I've been very focused on improvement over the last 5 years and have made significant progress from 4Q in 2020, trying out a variety of study habits. These answers are all my opinion, and I know stronger players may be more knowledgeable than me about some of these things, but this is just based on my experience. And I told Isaiah I definitely remember interviewing him, and if you want to check out that episode, it's the interviews at the LA Open from way back when. He's the first interview, I think, that I did. And so that's Isaiah. He will be answering some of these questions. So, and I've categorized this by question, so we can kind of put all the answers from each of these players into one question, and then we'll move on to the next question. And then Dalan, who is from what I've last heard from him, a Fox 7 Dan and an AGA 3 Dan. And he just says, hey Justin, hope everything's going well for you, and I hope everything is going well for you as well. Hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. I'm going to be calling you Dalan through the entire thing. And then Seventus, who is a Fox 8 Dan, who posted every answer in the YouTube comments in multiple threads, and because you can't, I don't know, I guess you can't post super long comments. And so thank you so much for your effort into answering my questions. And then finally, last but not least, Sadaharu, who is currently a 6 Dan on OGS, but is complete veteran over there and has always dominated the ladders. And then, so we'll see what they have to say about all of the questions that I've asked. Starting with, what do you do when there's nothing to do on the board? Isaiah says, this is something I still struggle with. Sometimes reinforcing your groups or trying to threaten a group can be bigger than a small endgame. At other times, you just have to start playing endgame very early into the game. These games I find very frustrating, so I try not to let things get settled. Rather than defend a group, I'd prefer to attack your group and make neither of us settled. I am totally on board with you, and your uncertainty about this kind of reassures me that I don't have to fully understand all of this yet to become as strong as you. So I can kind of keep climbing and figure that out on the way. So I appreciate that answer, and I'm very much in that camp as well. I really like active Go games and ones with attacks and things like that. On the same question, Dalan answers, if there's ever a point where there's nothing to do, I would pass and count the game. But to answer how you felt, if there's a large point left on the board that would normally be bad direction, it becomes the biggest spot since it's the most open area of the board. I believe it's common to get lost in the middle game when there's no obvious point to pressure or attack, and that's where endgame can essentially begin. If you can count the game and you believe you're behind, you can try an all or nothing strategy and train your flailing spirit to gain even a small chance to make a comeback. However, if you're leading or it's close, you can just begin the end game to finish the game. I think that's a solid answer, very measured, and it makes sense. If you feel like there are building influence and center control doesn't seem like it would benefit you too much, why go for it and go for something more solid, like just start the end game. And then also the point you made about it completely depending on the state of the game, whether you are behind or ahead, is very, very important as well. So I think that is a good answer. I would evaluate the board and check to see if I'm ahead or behind, or if it's even. Based on that, just make sure you do the things to stay ahead or rustle up some feathers and try to increase the chance of you coming back. Otherwise, just start endgame so that you can just get more points. So I think that's a very easy enough to understand answer. Let's see what Seventus has to say. Think from the opponent's perspective. If you don't see any outstandingly good moves for yourself, try to find them for the opponent. You can easily discover moves that way and then play to take away the opponent's desirable moves. Also ask yourself if there's any spot that you'd feel annoyed if your opponent played. If everything is already fully settled and boring, then the game has just switched to a smaller stage. But there's still big and small. The scale is just different. In some peaceful games, the endgame can start before move 100. So the first step is realizing that you're in the endgame. This is a difficult situation even for strong players, so it comes down to the discipline of playing moves that have some value, like endgame moves, or like moves that take away the opponent's good follow-ups. I like those questions that you brought up to ask yourself, to really be thorough about evaluating the big moves on the board when you feel like there's nothing big on the board. To just kind of ask yourself, is there something annoying that they would play? Is there something that I can play that's annoying for them? And just kind of going through this list and then just kind of realizing that endgame is fine, right? And then this is kind of echoing what Dalan said. And then also what Isaiah said, because you're kind of saying it's a difficult situation for even strong players. So I guess I don't have to worry too much about it. And I feel like this advice is also very insightful, so I can use that in my games as well. And then finally, Sadaharu on this question. In my opinion, there's always something to do on the board. You can exploit the opponent's weaknesses, attack the opponent's groups, defend your weaknesses, expand your territory, reduce your opponent's territory, or just follow up on whatever strategy that you had. If really not sure, just play somewhere big in terms of territory, since Go is about territory after all. If you feel like there's nothing meaningful to do, probably you screwed up somewhere. Even if that's the case, we still go to finish the game before reviewing. Yeah, I think that's the struggle, because there is always something to do on the board, but then the problem is that you don't realize what there is to do on the board. So I guess that's another ingredient, is to cast doubt in your rigid understanding of there's nothing to do on the board, and really just look at it and say, is there really nothing to do on the board? I think one thing for me is that when I feel like there's nothing to do on the board, it's usually when every single group I see on the board is so solid and thick, like basically 80-90% alive. And so attacks don't work, defense doesn't seem like a thing, and then territory seems small because like everything's taken up already. So I think that's kind of where I struggle. Already learning a lot, I think, from these questions. The next question that I have: do you ever play moves just to erase the Aji? Isaiah writes, I found that if the Aji is not going to break my game, I will just accept the consequences later in the game and refuse to play the slow move. Even though sometimes that's the wrong option, I believe it has helped me get better at shape early in the game, so there's less Aji later. In a tournament, I would probably defend if the Aji is very significant and could cost me the game. That's very reasonable. Yeah, like just overall, yeah, I hate playing these like Aji erasing moves, and it's really not natural for me to make these kinds of moves, and that's why I asked the question, like, am I doing something wrong by not playing these moves and being stubborn? But at the same time, I can totally relate to like being at a high pressure, high stakes situation where this one piece of Aji could really collapse the entire game and you would win otherwise, and you just feel like you just gotta make sure that's solid. I think you also make a good point about the like punishing yourself almost of like not fixing your Aji moves so that you are just better at the shape in the first place. Because if you refuse to fix your Aji, then it forces you to become better and more solid when you start out so that the Aji doesn't appear later on. And then Dalan's answer is, when the Aji is working and it's really dangerous or big, of course, you can play a move to defend it. On the other hand, if you're scared to have any Aji, it would be a good idea to work on your reading skills so that little bit of Aji no longer seems like a big deal. There are common openings where one player can completely surround a single stone in 4 moves, but it still has the ability to run or live. Playing a 5th move immediately would feel slow, and you need to utilize the thickness achieved from surrounding. Using thickness and not worrying about points is a really useful thing to do in the middle game. In fact, especially in handicap games, something like this becomes even more so the case. My only strategy to play against high handicap is to force my opponent to live in areas around the board and try to win in the endgame. So all in all, I would not worry about a little bit of Aji unless it is crucial to the status of the game. Okay, seems like you're kind of on board with Isaiah's advice. Let's see if everybody says the same thing. Seventus has a pretty long answer for this one. Let's see. The classic example of such a move is to capture a laddered stone for a thick shape, even though a ladder breaker might not have been played. Oh yes, that is the whole Fundamentals of Go by Kageyama. That's what he says. Like, you just capture it. Don't think about it. Just capture it. Okay, let's see. Yes, such moves are played from time to time because they give you more freedom to maneuver more flexibly after the Aji is gone. In a sense, style plays a part. For example, if you play a very speedy, fast-moving Fuseki, you'll be left with multiple thin shapes, and eventually you'll have to step back to fix with good timing to prevent collapse. This is like a race car slowing down to take a corner from time to time. Play speedy and go back to patch up with good timing. This sort of style was epitomized by Go Seigen, and it's very difficult to play since the timing of such moves has to be perfect. The other style is to start slow and solid. Then, since there's no Aji, you go hard on the fighting, invading, etc. Another situation where you might want to defend a weakness first is in preparation for an attack or an invasion that would be compromised by the existence of that Aji. As for how to time it, basically it's when the opponent's Sente move is worth less than your Gote fix. It's okay to leave weaknesses alone if you have a plan for how to handle it, but if you leave multiple weaknesses behind, it can quickly spiral. Yes, that's what I was worried about, is that like, yeah, I may not be worried about the Aji right now, but I have been in situations where later on, it's just like I could not foresee this coming, and like that Aji was really I really wish it wasn't there. Continuing, so I'd say if you find yourself having played a fast opening and you're left with multiple weaknesses, it's good to patch up the most severe / annoying one. Remember the style thing I mentioned before. If you go fast, speedy style in the opening, there will be weaknesses to patch / deal with later. And if you go slow and solid in the opening, you'll be the one aiming to exploit the opponent's thinness and weakness later. Another concrete example of a good Aji fix is in the star point approach kick Joseki. The AI often likes to play the Hanetsugi rather early to fix the invasion Aji in the corner, because this Aji fix also creates Aji in the opponent's shape. Hold on, the Hanetsugi, what is that? So I know the kick Joseki, but once you kick, yes, there is like an approach later on that you can, the opponent can play. I'm going to have to do some research. I'm not sure if I know what the Hanetsugi is, or what Sugi even is. If the Aji you're fixing is strictly related to points, then it can be considered a category of endgame. Remember that you often see AI not even bothering to save a group in the corner until later, because that is just points and does not affect the board in any way. Ah, yeah, I've noticed that. They just kind of, like, giant corners. Like, I'm like, why are you not saving this right now? I felt like any human would save that group, but I see the point of, like, that group, whether it lives or dies, it doesn't change the outer board state, so it's definitely hard to accept. Such Aji should definitely be left until it becomes the biggest points move in the endgame situation. But Aji that affects the power balance on the board is a bit different, like a group that won't die but will come under attack. Q players often leave such groups around, and down players will push the groups around for free profit. If you can attack and gain something for free, it is like an additional komi. So fixing Aji that will give your opponent free profit is often worthwhile. Just think about komi. It's only 6.5 points, but it makes a big difference because it is for free. Whew, there's a lot of good insights in there, and I think kind of the answer I'm approaching is that this is just one of those things you have to make a judgment on, and depending on the board state, and realize that you can't have this solid answer of like, oh, never take any risks and always fix your Aji versus, or always leave Aji and be as fast as you can always. Neither approach works, and you do have to make your judgment on like what kind of Aji are you okay with? What kind of Aji do you think that it's worth fixing? It's kind of like life in a lot of ways. Like, you have a lot of problems that you encounter throughout life, and you can't fix every single one of them as they come up. And so you have to make sure you know which ones are important to fix. Like, it's kind of like, I don't know, like health issues or something, right? Like you have like certain health issues, like going to the doctor. Do you really want to go to the doctor for every single thing that happens? Like when you get a cold, probably not, right? You can kind of take some over the counter, but then you have some other Aji where you might be like, your stools may be black, and that might be a sign of something very serious. And so you might want to go to the doctor for that, but you have to make a choice and you have to make a judgment based on like, what risks do you think are worth taking and which ones are not? So I think that's a good nuanced answer. Sadaharu's answer, it depends on how big the Aji is and the current game situation. If the Aji is very big and most likely there is something, then it's better to defend. However, if you are already losing, then it may be better to leave the Aji there and wait for the opponent to play. Your opponent may not play correctly and it will complicate things, thus increasing the chances of a win. That's another angle for sure. This is kind of repeating as well. The whole, depending on whether you're winning or losing, you should play differently. And I think it all comes down to the same thing, which is the judgment of like, okay, is this Aji important to fix or not? And so it is a nuanced answer, and it's not like all or nothing. Like, it's not like a very concrete answer. But I think I can continue developing my sense for that. I have been like losing. Like, I've been kind of playing recklessly at certain times, and the Aji has caught up to me and caused me to lose games. And so I'm thinking, like, oh, should I go play more solid and try to make sure nothing can happen? And I'm trying to find that balance. And I think this is just one of those areas where there is this spectrum, and you have to find the right medium for the decision-making process. Okay, the next question was, what approach has been more successful for you? Trying to squeeze every last bit of value out of each stone, or playing good enough moves for a more solid overall game? Isaiah says for this question, one of the things that has made me a much better player is by changing the ways I play month to month. Sometimes I will try and squeeze all the value I can out of every stone for months. When I hit 2Q, I decided to make my game much calmer. It helped me break a plateau and forced me to improve my endgame. I think this might be related to the paradigm shift question too. It's so difficult to force yourself to adopt a different style, even temporarily, but it will teach you so much about the game. I've lost 20 to 25 games in a row by doing this, but it helped me overall. Yeah, that's a scary thing to change your style, because you know that, like, yeah, you may not be improving with the current style, but you kind of know what to expect. And then when you change it, you may just end up going on a losing streak, which is never a happy feeling. So, but then I do this where I like change my style as well. And I kind of try to adjust game by game, or like just a few games at a time rather than a whole month. I think I just notice whether I'm losing groups. Like if I'm playing and I start losing all these groups, then I'll start reining in my aggressiveness, and I'll just try to play more solid, and then I'll start losing on points, and then I go back, and so it's always this kind of pendulum thing. But yeah, I think that's good advice for changing the way you play every now and then. And so I guess your answer to this question is kind of like, it's just a matter of style. Like, do you want to play a more solid approach and try to go with medium, or do you want to try to maximize value? And it's kind of like a style thing, and you have to find out what works best for you. And then Dalan says for this one, I do both. Most of the time, I look for what I believe is the best move. However, there are times when I know my opponent is really strong in certain areas, and I don't mind taking a small loss to avoid playing them at what they're best at least in a serious game. This happens in many Joseki where I don't even enjoy the board state after the sequence my opponent is excellent at. I'll do a small mistake and play a less conventional move against them to try to get past that small detail of the game. I really like messy games. I like games where, like, you don't know what's going. Like, obviously, sometimes these messy games turn out where I just lose big right in the beginning, and it just sucks. But if the game stays messy and uncertain, I like that. However, I like playing Joseki. I don't like playing weird moves. And I'm scared. I'm scared to play weird off Joseki moves like the other Fox players do. But maybe I should try to do that some more often. I know that I saw this video one time where it wasn't a trick move in the Joseki, but it was like, hey, here's the move that is not technically Joseki, but it's not that bad. And the thing is, this move, it will help you learn how to fight, and it'll start things. And I really like that. And I want to learn more moves like that and try to apply them to my game to have more interesting and dynamic games rather than the same old like approaches and enclosures that I always see. Seventus writes for this one, at my level, there's no leeway to consider moves that are not efficient. Go is a battle for efficiency. If you lose 0.2 points with every move compared to, or 0.2 points with every move. I'm sorry, my Americanism is making me process this comma as a comma rather than a decimal. Well, I guess a comma. Do you guys? So you know how in Europe they use commas for decimals, and in the States you use periods for decimals? Is it like we're both call them decimals? Except, I don't know what I'm asking. I think I'm answering my own question. Anyway, sorry about that that aside. So if you lose 0.2 points with every move, okay, because the thing is, like when I say 0.2, I'm really imagining a point for the point and not a comma. Anyway, sorry. 0.2 points with every move compared to the opponent who gains that over you, then by move 100, you'll be 20 points behind. You have to choose the most efficient move that you can handle. Of course, it is impossible for humans to play the AI move most of the time, but whenever possible, we should strive to play efficiently and never slacken. This is especially important when we are leading the game. Many won games are lost because of playing too many relaxed moves. Yeah, like sometimes it's even harder to win a one game. It's like so much pressure. You just have to play so perfectly. Whereas in a loss, like when you're in a losing game, you feel like you can just do whatever you want. Like you're losing already. Just do complicated, weird things and see what happens and try to stir things up. So it's almost, I don't know, it's kind of a weird situation where when you're losing, you're kind of more relaxed. And when you're winning, you're in all this tense situation. Sadaharu's insight for this question: in my opinion, if you're already winning, then there's no need to try so hard to play every move correctly. For example, losing 5 points doesn't matter if you've already killed a big dragon. If you are not winning, or if the game is close, then it's better to try to gain something from each stone to maximize the chances of winning. There's a common theme I'm seeing throughout all these questions, and I think that maybe some of the not as strong listeners can pick up on it, but the state of the game really matters for the decision making that you go through for each of the moves that you make. Whether you are winning or not is a very important thing to be aware of. So that's a big skill I need to work on as well, maybe without using the estimate score button. All right, next question. Should you try to juice your game? So this is, I think we're starting to... Oh, never mind. So the next question is, should you try to juice your games for as many insights as possible or get to the key points? I don't know if I missed the answers, but I think I only have answers from Dalan and Seventus on this one. Dalan says, more games is always good. I believe reviewing games is good when you feel lost or that you were extremely uncomfortable with an area. I do not review all my games by any stretch, but when I do, it's to find the key points I missed and move on. Going extremely in depth in one game doesn't feel extremely useful to me. If you sit with a lot of your games and you fall prey to the same mistakes / uncertain feelings, I would take time to learn more about the position to be comfortable with. Or if that feels too difficult, just how to avoid these positions in general. Okay, so to put it succinctly, I would say you're kind of in the camp of getting to the key points. And the way you explained it makes me inclined to agree. And another way I'm thinking of it now that I'm reading your answer, is like if I imagine a double-digit Q player spending hours on one game, I think... Okay, so the thing is that the insights from that game I don't think are going to be super insightful or important. The only benefit of that is the amount of sheer time spent on the game will absolutely lead to some reading improvements and just overall thinking about Go is the good practice, I think, but not necessarily the fact that you're juicing the games for insights. Seventus writes for this one, in review, you must focus on fixable mistakes, stuff like making a wrong decision, not stuff like making a big blunder or oversight in a reading situation, but mistakes of logic, direction of play, Joseki choice, etc. This also depends on the game. Some games there isn't really much to dig into, but other games are chock full of valuable lessons and learning points. So one size does not fit all in game reviews. It really depends on the game you are reviewing. Okay, so I do have this game that I mentioned in the beginning of the episode where I feel like I don't know what I did wrong and it just sloped into my opponent's favor through the entire game. And now that you say this, it's giving me the feeling that when I go in depth on that game, I'm going to find not too many things other than like I just generally didn't play efficiently enough. So and then there's other games I've played where I felt like, I think I even mentioned it a few episodes ago, where I felt like there were several life and death problems in the game. There was Tsujis and things like that to really like wrap my brain around. So I think I definitely, can see the focusing on fixable mistakes being a thing. Um, I think the big blunder point is also interesting that you made, because when I make a big blunder like that, I really want to do something about it, and I want to make sure I don't do that again. And I realize that you can't really do that much about it because you know already what you're supposed to do. Maybe do more Sumego? I don't really know. Next question is, what's a good thought process to follow when you feel like you're in a catch-22 situation in a game? Isaiah's thoughts on this is, my general thought process in a catch-22 is, can I sacrifice this? Can I tanuki? If I was the other color, which group would I attack? Or which big move would I take? I've died plenty of times when I should have defended, and defended alive groups more than I'd like to admit. Putting yourself in the opponent's shoes can really help see what's important in these instances. That's tough. Like, I know that's important to put yourself in the opponent's shoes, but I know it's also very difficult for me to do that because you just get kind of tunnel visioned on your own stuff. Like, I want to do this, I want to do that. But I'm sure there's some Sun Tzu quote about knowing your opponent's thoughts process. Your initial thought process guidance here, can I sacrifice this and can I tanuki? Man, those are difficult questions. I think I look at my own stuff and it's confusing to me because when I see stronger players play, I'm like, they're sacrificing that? They're tanukiing from that? And I'm surprised. And I go to my own game and I try the same thing. And I realize my situation was completely different and that was completely bad. And I had to not sacrifice it. So that's tough. I feel like I just need more experience, maybe just to really get an understanding of what I'm getting out of every group on the board. Dalan says, I believe this usually means you fell into the opponent's plans. After the game, you can find out which move put you into such a predicament. During the game, I would be sure to calm yourself and even think about giving up one of the sides entirely, and see if you have a salvageable position afterwards. There's a reason it's called a catch-22, and at the end of the day, you just have to make your choice and live with it. Yep. I think that's also very true very often. I have a bad habit of playing pretty looking moves without really thinking about the consequences. And I try to deal with the consequences as they come. And that's kind of the lifestyle I have too. I try to take each day like by day. And sometimes maybe I should think a little farther ahead and prepare for things and understand that my actions today will affect tomorrow. Maybe more on the go board than in real life. It's these small sequences. I think I am an aggressive and thorough reader when it comes to life and death situations, when it comes to killing and living and connecting and disconnecting. But especially in like the opening, I don't think too much about it. And maybe it doesn't matter as much, but I think I need to start really meditating more on the implications of the opening moves that I'm choosing and read a couple moves out. Like, well, if they jump, does that still look good for me? If they invade the corner, does that still look good for me? Am I okay with both of those options? And because sometimes I just do what I normally do and then they do the next move and I go, oh, okay, this is a new predicament. And then, it's definitely a move that I could have seen coming, but I just didn't consider it. So I need to put that into my habits. Seventus says, whichever way of playing applies most pressure to the opponent. Also related, an old Go teaching from ancient China goes something like this. A Go master does not create difficulties for himself. He creates them for his opponent. So keep this in mind and strive to apply pressure and create difficulties for the opponent. And also not difficulties for yourself. I've been kind of thinking about this today, too. Like, I've lost some fighting spirit lately, and I've been trying to play too safe. And I think you just have to find those special fights to fight. You can't just be doing it willy-nilly, but you do have to take the opportunity when you see it and cut that stone, even though you don't see what the future holds. You just got to do it sometimes. And I feel like I feel more natural when I shake things up a bit in that way and make sure my opponent's not like cruising and like I'm cruising and we're both kind of cruising. I don't like that, right? And like it's like picking and choosing your battles. And so when you're the one picking and choosing the battles, you at least have some input into the risk that both of you are taking. So I think I want to keep trying to find the best fights to take. Okay, continuing. In your weak group example, I think my weak group example was I have a weak group and saving it and jumping out will give my opponent more territory. If I leave it alone, my opponent will capture it maybe or put it under attack. Having such a liability is going to continuously handicap you and slowly strangle you, so it is better to abandon it or save it fully rather than running away for the rest of the game. That is not a winning strategy. So if you're in such a situation, think about attacking and applying pressure first. If your opponent has to respond to you, then he does not have time to attack your weak group, right? Just make sure you're threatening something of equal value to your group in case of a trade. Another thing to consider is what situation you enjoy most and pick the move that is likely to lead to the kind of game that you want to play. Well, it's like you already knew what I was going to say, and you're definitely on the money there. And I want to, that's one thing I do want to do moving forward is trying to make the kind of game that I like. Because then when I enjoy the game more, I feel like I play better too. Sadaharu says, I think the Coca-Cola method is quite good, lol. A lot of times all the options you are thinking of are okay, so it's just a matter of decision or strategy. When you can't make up your mind, a coin toss may help. Just try to do it in your mind and don't really toss a coin. Oh, imagine you had just you brought a coin to every tournament and you just every few moves you flip a coin and you're like alrighty, and then you make your move. Coca-Cola. If you don't know what I'm talking about, Paduk Doctor has this method when he doesn't know what to play and he's between two moves. He goes Coca-Cola, Coca-Cola, and he just alternates and then he just picks one. It's kind of like eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Maybe it's a Korean thing. I don't know. All right, next one. Have you ever noticed a spike in improvement after taking a break from Go, or have you experienced rust after a break? All right, so now we're moving on to the meta questions. Isaiah writes, I found that when I've studied a lot in a period of time, taking a break is necessary. Last year, I went to Go Congress, and afterwards, felt my mind was completely overloaded. Wow, you went to Go Congress. That's awesome. I stopped playing for 3 months. I feel like I would do the same thing. If I went to, honestly, that sounds like such an intense experience. That is one of the things, like, I don't know if I can handle Go Congress. Like, you guys play Go, like multiple games of Go every day, don't you? I would probably try to spend a lot of time in the silly section where people play like multicolor Go and things like that. I would still consume Go content, and I did a few Sumego a day, but when I returned, it felt like all this information I had gotten from various lectures settled in my brain, and I ended up immediately going from 5 to 6 down on Fox when I returned. Well, that's awesome. Definitely a good promotion for getting out there and getting to tournaments and things like that, because I think doing something like that can really inspire you and help your brain really get active and process the game better. I found that in my experience. When I've gone to tournaments, I feel invigorated and I feel like I can improve. Dalan's insight on this. Most definitely. I can remember playing for a couple months and getting to 11K. I took a break and came back to being 2K almost instantly. Oh my goodness, that is quite a jump. So you 11Ks out there who've been grinding for years and years, maybe you should take a break for a couple months and see if you become a 2K instantly like Dalan did. It erased a lot of bad habits and I began to only do things I thought work. It's such a small thing to miss when you're active, but if you do things hoping your opponent misses something, I don't think you're playing the game correctly. I hope for high quality games that my opponent brings out moves just as good as the ones I'm playing, or even better. I mainly see it as a good time to clear your head and bad habits start to clear your head and bad habits to start fresh upon coming back. Yeah, that's been my experience too, and that's why I have this theory. Because during my break, I feel like right before it, I had all this mess in my brain about Joseki, Tsuji, and direction of play. I had just so much stuff going on in my head, and because from all the studying and just trying to get better. And then when I came back, it was very clear, and I was very clear-headed, and I felt like I was focusing more on the important stuff, and I was able to see the game with fresh eyes. Seventus. Has Seventus ever noticed a spike in improvement after a break? This has happened to me many times, mostly when I was a Q player, but even at Dawn level. I believe it has to do with forgetting stubborn bad habits or weakening bad logic, breaking a bad mindset, etc. Jedi Master Yoda said, "You must unlearn what you have learned." And for Go, this is a very important concept, especially for us self-taught Western amateurs. We often pick up terribly bad habits, unique to our own situation, and the more we play, the more these habits, both good and bad, are ingrained. That's part of why people with 2,000 plus games get stuck at Q level. They play so much that their bad habits become second nature instinct. So if you take a break, such bad habits will lose a bit of power and potentially enable you to grow once the bad habits are not holding you back anymore. Regarding rustiness, not really. It was just a matter of resharpening the blade with some Sumego and practice games. You don't totally forget how to play. Go logic remains. It's mostly the sharpness of moves and reading that has to be reacquired, but I haven't found it hard to recover. Yeah, I think that's something that I really like about Go, is that no matter how long you take a break from it, it's, some of it will be rusty, but I feel like when I take a break I haven't played Rocket League in a really long time. I'm just kind of done with it for now. But I know that when I take a break from it, my mechanics are so bad and I'm just terrible, and people are just kind of looking at my missed saves and going, huh? Like, what is this guy at my level doing? And I look like a complete fool. And I feel like in Go, I might miss some reading sequences, but it's like an understandable like slip up rather than losing my whole skill on a fundamental level. Sadaharu says no. So Sadaharu is a little bit contrary to the three previous. No, a break has always been harmful for me, especially when it comes to serious games. Playing more definitely helps. I think that even if you still remember your Joseki and can read, the competitive mindset and the level of concentration will still need time to get back. So, it's different strokes for different folks type of thing. I think that... it's worth a shot for if you've never taken a break before, and I think you can still recover, but be warned, there are people like Sadaharu where you just might get worse. So this is another question why I either lost the answers while I was organizing this, or only two people responded, Seventus and Sadaharu. How do you know when you can leave a group alone and not save it? Seventus says, you can leave a group alone and not save it if your move elsewhere is worth more. For example, an opening move on the side to expand a moyo might easily be worth 30 points, but saving a corner group might be worth 20 points. Another good concept, wow, man, that's hard to grasp. An opening side extension move for a moyo is 30 points? Is that really true? And then just like leaving your 20-point corner to die? That's a hard one. That's a tough pill to swallow for me. Another good concept here is the idea of a golden group. A group that is so difficult to attack that it turns an overly aggressive attack into a burden, inefficient for the opponent. Oh, and there's a YouTube video here. I gotta watch this, but I'll link you guys this video as well. I gotta make a note to remember. Golden group. You can also tanuki from the weak group if you can threaten the opponent's weak group instead. The concept of applying pressure, the best defense is a good offense. Yeah, it's kind of like the mutual destruction concept. It's kind of like a chaotic thing sometimes. I don't think many Go players like doing this, but theoretically, let's say you're in an endgame and you do the Hane Connect endgame, the standard one that kind of leaves you in Sente, right? Because you start in Sente and you end up with Sente. But let's say you go in under and then your opponent does the same thing somewhere else. And then you just keep going and then they keep going and then just it's a mess. That usually doesn't happen because I don't think people like doing that. I don't like doing that. But theoretically, it could be an even exchange. If there is Ko for life, even after the opponent attacks the group, then it is also often good to leave it alone. The AI does this all the time. Instead of living fully, it plays away after setting up a situation where the best the opponent can get is a Ko. Yeah, I've seen that. I get so confused by that, but the way now that you say it, that makes sense. Also, I like your idea of the golden group, where it's like you have this. It's kind of like a tank, right? In other video games, where you create a group that is so strong that you can just let your opponent try to kill it, and it will take forever for them, and so you can do so much more on the board while they do that. So that's honestly, I've never really thought of that. And it's just hard to leave, I love my groups and I don't want them to die. So it's hard to think that way. Sadaharu says, again, it depends on how big the group is and the consequences of saving it. If saving the group will produce an attack target and allow the opponent to gain big territory, then you can definitely consider sacrificing it. I think the more I'm reading your guys' answers about groups and sacrificing, I feel like I need to be bolder in leaving my groups alone to die. All right, next question. What are you personally not understanding or hoping to improve in your game at your level? Isaiah says, I am really struggling with a couple of things. The first is when to make Sente exchanges or when to leave them until later. Wow, that's like an issue you start off in DDK and carry all the way through to your level. My counting is also fairly weak for my level. Yeah, counting's rough. I've been trying to count like a lot more in my correspondence games. And correspondence games is definitely a good way to practice because you have like unlimited time. But I think I need to also work on my quick counting. Like I won't always have this much time, so I need to learn how to like count and make good estimates. I often miscount or don't have the discipline to count enough during a game. My biggest issue at the moment is falling into the trap of reading Go. Reading Go is being a focus on reading and thinking, does this work rather than is this good? Which leads me to pursue bad variations globally just because the reading works locally. Man, that's the stuff that I'm struggling with. Like I love like trying to find little things, and in the second episode of Starpoint, I talked about styles and referenced Insong's lecture on styles of Go. And one of the things he mentioned was like one of the types of players that he mentioned was the detective, who's constantly trying to snoop around and find little moves, even though there's nothing there. I really like that analogy, and I see myself in that a lot. And I'm trying to. That's part of the reason why I'm trying to like play more solid and not play like all this little stuff. But at the same time, I want to make the game that I want to make and play aggressively and play those attacking moves and things like that. So I'm kind of at I don't know what to do here situation. But I think I just kind of have to find the balance of like sometimes I do have to make those aggressive, interesting, messy moves. But also temper myself and not read everything that I see locally. Dalan hopes to improve everything, of course. I hope to improve everything, of course. Things I don't understand feels like it's becoming less, so the more I improve, it's more of a question of being able to see it. When I go to AI and review, it's not like it has some groundbreaking ideas, it just has near perfect judgment and reading, which makes it easier to know why it's playing in a certain fashion. As far as my biggest weakness, it's of course reading. It's the area I'm currently trying to improve the most and where a majority of my mistakes are made. Reading's tough, and especially as adult improvers, it's really hard to sharpen that knife. But I'm feeling that like up to a certain level, you can get by with like just decent reading. Let's see what Seventus is struggling with. For me, it's the balance between playing the most efficient moves and not collapsing, i.e. playing the most efficient move that I can manage. There's also an increasing sense that I need to work on the basics and on the tiny details, as I've got a very good sense of the whole board and of Go logic and Go thinking. I also need more courage and skill to challenge the unknown. I also need more horsepower to work out novel situations more rapidly. Speed calculation is becoming more important than ever. And then Sadaharu also writes reading and judgment. So reading is, I guess as you get stronger, you eventually start to realize how behind you are at reading and why that is so important. Man, the more I read this stuff, the more I'm like, it sounds a lot like the stuff I'm struggling at with my level. It's just you guys are at a higher level with it. So in a way, it's consoling. The next question is, what was your last paradigm shift in your Go understanding, and do you recall the one that sent you over to Dawn level? Isaiah writes, my last paradigm shift was when I realized that I tend to fight until the very end of the game. When I shifted that to force myself to take points when they were given to my during my fights, I improved significantly. Force yourself to take points when they were given to you during the fights. Interesting. I think I know where you're coming from, and I've also tried to do that, but sometimes I regret it. Like sometimes I see that, oh, I can just take points instead of like continuing this fight. Fine, go and live comfortably. And then they live comfortably, and I'm like, I wish I was still attacking that group. I don't know if it's right or wrong, or if there's something I'm missing, but that's how I feel sometimes. Dalan says, I've actually joined a rather small OGS ladder with some friends, and as someone who has not really touched this time setting, it opened my eyes to quite a few things. I found that a lot of my initial too aggressive ideas can be countered rather easily without pressure of a clock. I believe that I was getting an edge just from the initial action of wanting to respond to a move that's aggressive. I also realized to start thinking of endgame a little more from midgame. I've had a few games that were rather close, and I was allowing good endgame sequences to occur when there was no need to do so. One of the final things from correspondence games I realized is playing games that are extremely complicated and reading heavy is not an ideal way to do correspondence for me. I was thinking of the game all the time, even when no moves were played for a few days. Mistakes feel much worse as I have to look at them for weeks on end instead of done in 20 minutes. It makes me really want to play better moves so I don't have to have my mind occupied on mistakes for weeks. Although this one really just applies to correspondence games. Yeah, no, you guys have heard my thoughts on correspondence games and how I've totally agreed with a lot of that stuff. I think that I can spend an inordinate amount of time on certain moves, especially when I'm behind. I'm just desperately trying to find a sequence that works when maybe there's nothing there. And if it was a timed game, I would have been fine, or not fine. I would have died, but I would have been forced to accept my fate faster. Seventus, the paradigm shift that sent me to Dawn level has to be the realization that taking a local loss in a fight, but gaining globally, is better than trying to win the local fight, but losing globally. Losing the battle, but winning the war, i.e. If I lose a local area 2 or 3 times and it results in outside gains such as thickness, wall, moyo potential, and so on, then at some point, this becomes so overwhelming that the opponent cannot repeat the trick without dying. And going hand in hand with this realization is that if the opponent does win the local fight and live small, then that is almost worthless. He's making 2 points with his eyes, but if he gives you an outside wall in return, then that wall is far more valuable. My latest paradigm shift. It's hard to say. it might be the realization that the opening matters greatly in determining what kind of middle game occurs, and that if I want to enjoy a certain middle game, like an attacking moyo game, I should aim to set it up in the opening, instead of trying to set it up from a territorial opening. It seems like a basic realization, but I've even seen a game where Yamayuta lost because he played 2-3 points and then attempted to play a moyo attacking game. The opening just did not suit that style of play. Another paradigm shift might be the realization that pressure matters immensely, and that if two moves of equal value exist, one should always choose the move that applies the most pressure to the opponent, the move that is most difficult to respond to. Don't easily do the opponent's work for them or let them off the hook and take it easy. I suppose you could also say that my realization that my basics are weaker than those of my current level is another paradigm shift, since it means that I should go back to the basics and play catch-up. Western Go players, even the strongest, are often weak at the fundamentals compared to Asians of a similar level. There's more of a focus on strategy than tactics, and on proverbs than practical techniques. Man, I want to learn how to do that. I want to learn how to set up the opening to create a certain kind of game. I haven't found any videos from strong players teaching how to do that. Actually, you know what? Takumi Go might have had a video about designing your opening. But I feel like I feel like it's so hard to shape the game. I'm gonna have to think about this. I want to improve this part of my game and really try to see if I can set up the game in a better way. Sadaharu writes, I think the one that sent me to the Dalan level was to learn and remember how to play the correct moves. The latest one is probably the one I mentioned above. A lot of the times the choices do not matter, so just pick one. How do you know what the correct moves are? I assume you mean like the Honte moves? How do you learn those? Like, what's the best way to learn those? Was a study habit change a significant factor in any of your breakthroughs in Go? We got 3 questions left, this being one of them. Isaiah, doing easier Sumego but making myself read it twice before answering helped me stop making sloppy mistakes in my game. I was doing difficult Sumego before and I found myself getting very frustrated. I only started playing slow games on Fox. I also only started playing slow games on Fox. I don't review as much as I should, but every game I do go through the big picture and try to conceptualize one important thing that I can actually change for the future. I've been considering doing that lately. Like, I've been playing kind of the faster 5-minute games on Fox, and I'm like, you know what, maybe I should switch it up to the 20s and see how that works for me. Dalan says, I've always enjoyed the opening / joseki and reading books. I think these have helped, but not a significant amount. Studying Sumego and Tsuji are probably some of the key things that I have had help improve my play the most. Mainly since it's impossible to read a move you aren't considering, which is what Tsuji has helped with. Sumego is the golden goose of study, and when I can look at an invasion and simply know for a fact that the shape they are making will die, is a massive confidence boost. Yes, yeah, I feel like I've felt something similar with not just Sumego, but Joseki. And Joseki, when you play off Joseki, it doesn't necessarily lead to death, but sometimes you play a Joseki move and your opponent is stumped by it and they spent like a lot of time on it, and you're like, oh, okay, well, this is free thinking time for me, because I know what my next move is, depending on what they play. As far as how I study, it's typically been in bursts, extremely intense for a period, and then I'll have more laid-back periods to try to use everything I've been learning. I don't think that this applies to some of the more tactical sides of Go, but everything else seems to take time to use efficiently. Seventus writes for this question. I change up my study habits all the time, working on various things. A while back, I was doing Yosei. Now I'm back to grinding a lot of Guan. Time Sumego. I've never heard that term for time Sumego. To work on speed calculating or easier positions. I'm quite good at deep calculations, but it takes too much time to be practical in online games. Sometimes I used flashcards to memorize Go patterns, positions, even Sumego solutions, but that was a long time ago. I think that if you're stuck, it's important to try and change what you're doing, both in actual games that you're playing or in how you're studying. Switching things up can really help shake something loose and get a new perspective. For example, if you only play big Moyo games, try hyper-territorial style and your understanding will increase. If you've been stuck at a certain level for a long time, studying diligently, then it stands to reason that while your study habits may be good, they are not sufficient, and you should try to seek something else, something novel. Try to find new ideas and inject them into your Go. Strangely, you must also be cautious about studying too much. Sometimes you can get even worse if you get absorbed in memorizing Joseki, for example. Oddly, it's sometimes better not to know, but to have the ability to work something out for yourself. So we come back eternally to the importance of Tsumego and improving your calculation ability and fundamentals. So, Tsumego is self-explanatory. Like, okay, yes, there's some variation in like the difficulty of the Tsumego that you do, whether you do timed Tsumego and like the collection that you choose. Sure, there's a lot of like details you can discuss. But when you guys all recommend getting good understandings of fundamentals and basics and stuff, like how do you do that? How do you do that? I want to know, how do you do that? Sadaharu says, no comments, but I think studying consistently definitely helps. Yep. Consistency is quite key. That's what I talked about in Study Plan Workshop, episode 82. I think maybe I should try some time Tsumego so that I can work on the faster calculating. And I should also maybe switch up my opening. I've been playing star points like nonstop because I wanted to remain consistent so I can kind of familiarize myself with it. But maybe I should try territorial style. I don't know. We'll see. What was your longest plateau in Go and what got you out of it? Isaiah, my longest plateau was 1Q to 1 dan. That's an excruciating plateau. It's like you got to tell everybody, I'm almost 1 dan. I joined AYD with Insung, which really helped me. I'm not sure I would have escaped that plateau quickly at all if I didn't have a teacher. Very solid advice. Dalan, unfortunately, I don't like to view things in this fashion. In my mind, I have for sure struggled to apply learned ideas. I have not cared enough about rank to really notice and get frustrated by some algorithm not going upwards. I believe that I'm always getting stronger and that's enough. That's such a wise and mature way to go about it. And I wish I could have that mentality more. And I do feel it sometimes though. Like when I'm staying at a certain rank, I do still feel like I'm learning and I'm trying to experience new ways of perceiving the game and I'm progressing. I don't feel like I'm in the middle of nowhere and just staying in the same spot, or I try not to. There's always just something that you can read or learn or watch or do, and there's just something you can always work on, and it's fun to do that. There are, of course, many barriers that require one to overcome hurdles that vary from player to player. If you can constantly assess what you personally need to not stay stagnant and take action to learn that area, I don't believe you will have time to worry about a number going up. Well said. I think that's the thing is like it's one thing to be good at Go, it's another thing to be good at becoming good at Go. So a lot of this advice is kind of feeding into the idea of like shake things up, make sure you kind of assess yourself honestly and in all different perspectives, try new things and keep that ball rolling in a sense. Seventus writes, my longest plateau was around Taijim 5 dan. Oh, how I'd love to plateau at Taijim 5 dan. My understanding had far outstripped my reading abilities, and my fighting skills were poor. I recall doing the classic collections, especially Gokyo Shumyo helped a lot. Those latter problems at the end were amazing for image training. Probably out of my league. I'm going to peruse it maybe though. Gokyo Shumyo. Sadaharu writes, the current plateau is probably my longest. I don't know how many years it's been. It's still waiting to get out. LOL. Oh, I don't want to be a harbinger or anything, and then you realize you start going down and you're like, no, my glory days are over. Knock on wood, of course. But yeah, I'm sure at your guys' level, I'm sure it's really hard to take it another step up. Finally, we're at the last question. Oh man, this has been an episode. What advice would you give to your double-digit Q self, and what advice would you give to your single-digit Q self? Isaiah, my DDK self, play way more games. Stop worrying about losses. Lose your first 1,000 games quickly. I would say the same thing to my DDK self. My SDK self, learn about and research shapes. My old shapes were terrible, and I would always blame the wrong thing for my losses when the problem was usually a broken shape. This I'm going to take to heart. I know that there's like a shape lecture that I have been avoiding, Deeson's shape lecture, and there's like a book. I got to do that. I think I do have this issue, so I want to do that. Dalan, take the longer road. Commit to playing more games and doing Tsumego. Don't idle around, and instead actually strive to be better as a person and Go player. That's solid. Seventus, advice to my DDK self. Winning or losing does not matter. Everyone is very weak and confused. Focus on Tsumego and Tetsuji problems and the fundamentals. Don't bother studying Joseki. Try to have fun and play more games without worrying about winning or losing. You're scared of losing. You think losing is a personal failing. It's not. Just have fun. Lose or win gracefully and learn from every game obediently. Oh, I like how you put that. That's very well put. You guys watch Ben Feingold? He's a chess YouTuber streamer. I don't really watch his videos, but I remember perusing back in the day, and one of the things he said was that he loved chess and that he would just always hang out at chess club and always just play chess, and he just loved it. And then one day he found out that he was really good at it. Like one day he just got better. And I think life is like that sometimes. You just have to immerse yourself and play and love what you're doing. And then one day you wake up and you're like, oh, somehow I'm good at this. Instead of focusing so much on being good. And then Seventus also has advice for the SDK self. There are a lot of things you believe to be good. Moves you think are necessary. Joseki you think are absolute. And if the opponent deviates, you think you need to punish him harshly. But Go is a much more open game than you believe, and often Joseki deviations work and are not, in fact, bad moves. Yeah, that one I learned the hard way, man. Like I always like studied Joseki like a good student, and then whenever my opponent played a bad a deviation from Joseki, I would be like, all right, you've made your last move. Now it's time to go down, because I will find whatever move makes this move not Joseki and punish you and win the game right now. And it was not ever that. So, yep, been there. Don't think so highly of your moves and of your understanding of Go, because it is often wrong, or even worse, a misunderstanding. Faithfully build up your reading abilities and emulate professional players by trying to understand why they played their moves. Think more, react less. Go is a thinking game. Also, don't believe your opponent. Check by reading if their moves work. Try to tanuki more and play less puppy Go. Play on a larger scale. Do not trouble yourself with small gains. Center-facing stones are often more valuable than an enclosed group on the side, even if it takes territory or steals territory from the opponent. Also, try to review your own games instead of immediately going for another game after losing. I feel like I really need to follow all of this advice. The tanuki more thing, I need to follow. I have trouble tanukiing. And then there was something else you said that I really wanted to. Center-facing stones are often more valuable than an enclosed group on the side. Yeah, I've always had the instinct of liking center-facing stones, but man, I'm still struggling with the idea of influence and like how to properly use influence. That's why I've been thinking of studying Takemiya Masaki's games. Yeah, also solid advice. And then Sadaharu's very simply put 5-word advice: play more, just do it. And I would echo that as well. to my weaker self. And to all of you who are struggling to improve and not playing enough games, just stop worrying about it. Go out in there and play. Thank you so much to you guys for writing in with all your amazing advice. I'm going to have to really digest this stuff and try to apply it to my games. I feel like this has really helped. You guys don't know how much I appreciate you writing in with such detail and thoroughness with all these questions. So again, from the bottom of my heart, thank you. I'm going to have to go through the whole thing and make a concise list of my personal insights that I really liked from all your answers, and put them on a sticky note, put them on the desk there, and then really think about all of them while I play. Oh man, that was a lot of good stuff. That was excellent. I need to maybe do that again in the future and see what other people have to say about it. That was a great read. I'm a little exhausted though from this. As you can tell, it's a long episode. But we have more listener mail. I guess before the listener mail, we usually do DDK advice. I'm trying to find my DDK advice. Where is my DDK advice? I had some. Okay, it's time for DDK Advice Corner. Tip of the day is sealing in is huge. It's kind of echoing what Seventus, or was it Seventus? Yeah, Seventus said in the last bit of the answer there. But if you have an opportunity to seal in your opponent's small group, whether it's on the corner or on the side, and deny them access to the center of the board from that group, that is huge. Take that opportunity. And conversely, if you're that person on the inside and you have an opening, take that opening. Make sure you peek out with it. That's a huge move. It's usually the right thing to do. And now it's time for the rest of the listener mail that doesn't have to do with all the questions. Andrew writes, "Hi Justin, thanks again for another great episode. I just wanted to give a shout out to Young-sun Yoon's awesome Baduk online platform, as I believe I have finally found the key to getting my wife interested in Go. For those who don't know, Young-sun Yoon is an 8-dan professional player and the author of several excellent Go books, the most notable of which, in my opinion, is her Mastering Basic Corner Shape Step by Step. It is truly a fantastic book and would highly recommend anyone at any level to give it a read. Anyway, I signed up for Awesome Baduk's new 1-dan challenge, which is a structured 6-week study course aimed at helping players reach the 1-dan level through daily homework, professional game review, tsumego, etc. It just began, but so far I'm really enjoying it. The reason I bring all of this up, to tie back to my earlier comment about finally finding a way to get my wife into Go, is because on Awesome Baduk's online platform there is an entire section of dedicated practice problems aptly named Speed Baduk. There are 12 levels starting at absolute beginner and progressing to high Q and even Dan difficulty. With each level, there are another dozen or so topic areas such as capturing, escaping, counter-atari, connections, ladders, nets, etc. And within each of these topic areas, there are between 8 and 24 practice problems. Later levels focus on slightly more advanced topics such as shortage of liberties, identifying the main chain in a fight, throw-ins, snapbacks, etc., all leading to a very smooth and systematic way to learn the elements of a game. I've been trying to get my wife into Go for years now, and while she would occasionally entertain me with a quick 9x9 game, she never really seemed to have much interest. I managed to convince her to give Awesome Baduk's practice problems a try, and I'm happy to report that she's actually been enjoying them quite a bit. Her enjoyment appears to stem from the fact that she can focus on a specific set of problems and feel like she's making meaningful progress toward actually understanding the game and at a pace that is conducive to her learning style and available energy at any given moment. In her words, I feel like I'm actually learning a lot. More so than I have from you. Haha, no offense taken. That's great that you found a way to get your wife interested. Have you heard of the skill tree in Go Magic? That sounds kind of similar to that concept. I really like the skill tree in Go Magic. It's fantastic and it's really well built. So I'll have to check out the Awesome Baduk version of this. Maybe I'll throw it out to my fiance to see if she'll bite. I was out of the house for a good chunk of the day this past weekend, and to my surprise, she sent me a link to an OGS game she had played entirely of her own volition, and I can't tell you how surprised I was to see that she was playing Go on her own time. She even asked me a few times this week if I wanted to watch her attempt to crush noobs online. LOL, the irony. It's like I'm falling in love with her all over again. That's awesome. I hope she goes and crushes some noobs, though. Just wanted to give this platform a shout out for those who may have friends or loved ones potentially interested in Go, but who are intimidated by the learning curve. This really does seem to be a great way to hook beginners' interest and provide them with relatively quick and easy bite-sized lessons aimed at generating confidence and enjoyment. I should mention that the platform is a few dollars per month, but it feels very much worth the cost. There is also plenty of video material accessible for free, but if you have a few bucks to spare, the structured practice problems are just seriously so great. Okay, that's enough praise for Awesome Baduk. Just wanted to make sure the community was aware of this great resource. Looking forward to next week's episode as always. Well, thank you so much for writing in, Andrew, and your glowing review of Awesome Baduk's services. I would be interested in signing, especially with the title One Dan Challenge, to like kind of get people up to one Dan by drilling them. If I have some more time, I think right now it's a busy time in my life. I think I would be interested in doing something like this. But yeah, thanks for writing in. Heath writes, last couple episodes you mentioned taking a break from Go. I thought I'd share my experience. After 9 months of pretty regular study and classes, went from 16K to 10K, I was somewhat forced to take a break, partly due to other responsibilities, and also giving myself a mild concussion that made it hard to focus on the board. Oh no, I hope you're okay. I assume you're okay because you're back at playing Go. Anyways, that break turned into 7 years of procrastination, if nothing else, maybe averaging doing one Sumego problem a month. When I came back, I was able to retain my rank and had only lost my Joseki. I was fortunate that AI was redefining popular Joseki during that time, so I didn't lose much. Since coming back, in the year and a half I've focused more on teaching, but also trying to improve, though still procrastinating from getting really serious about learning. I'm officially 8Q AGA, but probably actually a rank or two better than that. Yeah, because you gotta get out to tournaments to keep your AGA rank up to date. I don't play much online, mostly in person, and the Dan and near Dan players keep telling me I'm under-ranking myself. It's the humble thing to do, right? My break was longer than I would recommend anyone take, too much lost time, but taking a break I feel allows some of your bad habits to be forgotten and leave you with mostly the essentials that you had learned through study, and you get to start fresh again with a better position to learn from. I'm looking forward to hearing the Dan players respond to your questions. Keith, thanks for writing in. Hope you enjoyed the answers from the Dan players. Thanks for your added input for an experience of taking a break and how that's affected your Go playing. Norman writes, hi Justin, I've been a regular listener of your podcast for quite some time. Thank you for all the great insights. I should mention that English is not my first language, so I hope this message is clear enough with a little help from ChatGPT. It's one of the most useful things about ChatGPT. I have 2 short questions for you. I'm from Germany and live in a very rural area where it's hard to find any Go players. I've tried finding others through ads, but it hasn't worked out, so I mostly play online. Early on, I bought the Isis AI Go board. That's a pricey product. I liked the idea of playing online games on a physical board, and it works well for me. What I really appreciate are the built-in lessons. I get up an hour earlier every morning to study Go, and the board has become a big part of that routine. That sounds great. What's your opinion on devices like this AI Go board? Do you think they have a future? As someone who practices mostly alone, I find it very helpful. I would totally get one if it didn't cost an arm and a leg. And maybe if Go gets more popular, they will not cost as much. I don't know if it's like the most revolutionary or necessary equipment to have, because you can get the same results just by going online and using a web browser. But it's definitely great to have stones in your hand while you learn and analyze and things like that. I kind of alternate between analyzing online and then using my actual board for study. So with this thing, you can actually do both. And then you can also get more used to the real board by using it more often. So I think it's useful. It's just maybe not the most revolutionary, most necessary thing. Second question is about ranked games. I'm a passionate board gamer, but I've noticed that with Go, I get quite nervous before playing, especially when it's a ranked match. I've started turning off the rank display on OGS to reduce the pressure, which helps me start games more easily. But without the rank, it's hard to measure progress, and if I win a few games, lose a few, and so on, but I don't really know where I stand. Maybe it's just a deep respect I have for Go. Do you think it becomes easier over time to handle the pressure of ranked games? I want to improve, but I find it hard to track my development without looking at numbers. I'd love to hear your perspective on that. Thanks again for everything you do. Best regards from Germany, Norman. Thank you so much for being a listener of Starpoint, and thanks for writing in. That problem you have with ranks is a very, very common problem, something that I've felt, and pretty much, I mean, most players I think have felt that. What has helped for me is playing on Fox. I don't know why, I just feel more casual on Fox. So maybe try a different Go server. That could change up the feelings that you have. Sometimes it's nicer to just have another place to go. Sometimes you feel a little too attached to your account on a certain server. So maybe that's one tip I would give you. Another tip is playing more often helps. Like if you're playing once a month, then every time it is gonna feel stressful. But if you play like every day, every other day, day by day, you are gonna realize this is just a normal thing you do, and your rank only changes by so much, and you can just keep going. So those are the two pieces of advice I would have for you to not stress about your rank so much. I think the second piece is really key though, like playing more games, maybe even faster games, so that you don't stress so much every time and it feels like you're boiling in stress with all the time you have to think about the moves. And sometimes the faster games can really help you de-stress and get going and not feel like it's so serious all the time. So I hope that helps, Norman. Thank you again for writing in and listening. And finally, Spiros writes, really enjoyed the podcast. I can't really answer the questions because I discovered the game 2 years ago, but it took a while to wrap my head around it. For the past 6 months, I've been diving in more seriously, studying strategies and playing regularly, playing about 10 correspondence games at a time and about 1 live game per week. Thanks for the awesome content. Excited for more. Well, thank you so much for listening and writing in, Spiros. That's around the same rate I'm at right now. I play like 10 correspondence games with 1 live game per week. I do want to play more. I'm hoping I can ramp it up at some point, but I'm sure there are players that are weaker than you that would like your insights. So what questions it's the question of the week, is what questions do you guys have for me? If you're a weaker player and you weren't able to answer any of the questions, what questions do you have for a stronger player? Not just me, but maybe even the players that answered today. If you want to share your thoughts on that question, or if you have a ghost story to share or have a question of your own, the question is a question of your own. Leave a comment wherever you found this episode, or email me at starpointpaduk@gmail.com, starpointbaduk@gmail.com. If you're a YouTube listener, I would appreciate a like and a subscribe. And if you're a podcast listener, reviews and ratings also help. A very special thank you to James B., Tristan, and Jeff H. for supporting Starpoint. If you want to support the show, you can go to kofi.com/starpointpaduk, that's KO-FI, or check out the Starpoint store at store.starpointpaduk.com. Ooh, that was a long episode. What does a Pirate Go player say when he lives? Aye aye. Thanks for listening. Keep playing Go.